Hello, brother sewing and crafting family. Angela Wolf here, and I'm super excited to see you. So I have a question for you. Do you like to sew buttonholes? Do you like to embroider buttonholes? Or do you just absolutely avoid them? Well, I know 30 years ago, I would avoid them. I might sew one, but I would never sew two, never dared. So guess what today's all about? Sewing buttonholes, sewing and embroidery buttonholes. But not only that, the Aveneer has come out with something so fabulous that your placement is going to be beautiful. So welcome, say hi, and we're so happy. We are live in the chat with you today, and we are on Brothers Sewing Facebook and YouTube pages. So if you've been following the last few days, I've been sewing this top, and you've all been voting. You want a sleeve or no sleeve? So I have both here, and I still need your vote because I can't make up my mind. I like both sides. So, all right, say hi, say where you're from, and let's bring up our fabulous brother educator, Kathy Stipe. You know her as having all those recipes for My Design Center. Kathy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I have to ask you, Kathy. I'm thinking like 30 years ago, before I ever worked with brother, before the machines became so fabulous. Did you like sewing buttonholes?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to measure out everything. And this is, I mean, I guess I'm dating myself, but this was when we had machines that still did a 4-step buttonhole.
Oh.
And, it was like a nightmare to sew buttonholes. I would put a zipper in before I'd put buttonholes on something.
Yes, I would too. I would rather put a bound buttonhole in, which was a very couture technique, but I'd rather do that all day than sew buttonholes. And now, even through the last few years, when brother came out with this new foot that you'll be showing off, that's been out with the Luminaire. I sew buttonholes on knits, chiffon, organza, and then we even have the embroidered buttonholes. So there's no excuse now to not have buttonholes. But for the sewing side, I think the biggest one for people is lining them up. What is it going to look like on my fabric and lining them up? Are they going to be even? And brother's given us a great tool on the Aveneer, haven't they?
They certainly have. But before we move on, I have to tell you a quick story about disliking buttonholes. So my grandson is in a group called Odyssey of the Minds here in Florida. It's like a STEM group. And I was nominated to be the sewing advisor because my daughter-in-law is actually the teacher advisor for it. So she kind of volunteered or hooked grandma into it. So one little girl is in charge of doing costumes. So we've been making costumes for the last couple of weeks, and she was making a vest and she wanted to put buttonholes in it. So mind you, they have a non-brother old mechanical machine at the school for their use. So when I was there this past week, yesterday, I said to her, "Do you still want to make buttonholes?" And she says, "Yes." So I looked at the machine and I says, "I don't think we're making buttonholes," because it was that 4-step buttonhole thing. Oh. So I do have another brother machine. It's just the small embroidery sewing machine combination, older model. And I know it has a 1-step buttonhole. So it will be at this school when we go on at the next meeting date. So if she still wanted to do buttonholes, she can, but I think we've changed our tune about buttons and buttonholes now. So we'll move on.
The 4-step buttonhole. Well, first of all, do they have any idea how lucky they are to have you teaching in their class? Probably not.
Well, it was so endearing to me that they came back from spring break. And I says, "Did you have fun over spring break?" And she says, "Yes, I got to sew a tote bag with my grandma."
Yay! Look how beautiful that is.
That is wonderful. I want all the young kids to know how to sew.
Yes. And a 4-step buttonhole is not the place to start. So thankfully they have you, and they have a brother machine that they're going to be able to borrow from you, and they're going to get this done. And then someday they might move up to what you're going to show us today, which is the new buttonhole feature on the Aveneer, which hands down when I first heard about it, I thought, no way. Is it going to be this great? Yeah, it is.
It is. So let me change my camera and we'll get started and I'll show you what we're talking about. So this is the buttonhole foot that we were referring to that is so fabulous. And I'll go ahead and just kind of take it off the machine so I can lift it up. And I don't know if you can see, there's 3 black dots right here at the toe of the foot. This is where you adjust the size by putting your button in. But if you're sewing a fabric that might be a little finicky, there's this fabric support plate. It kind of has some kind of coating on the back of it that helps your difficult fabrics to slide easier or move easier as you're sewing a buttonhole. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about, that this little piece that's right here. And it just fits onto your machine like that. You would slide your fabric in between the 2 pieces, and then you're going to stitch your buttonhole. But I don't need that because I'm just going to stitch on regular cotton. And let's go back to my machine screen. And I have open my guidelines. I'm going to close that. Actually, I'm going to turn off my projector. I'll turn off guidelines and we'll just start from the very beginning. So I've been testing to see what showed up best on screen. So I have my buttonhole selected, 4-07. It's showing my buttonhole foot. And I have right here, I can change the color of my buttonhole just by tapping on the machine screen. I can also change the width. I can change the length of the stitch, and I can also change the size. But the magic is being able to do it directly on the fabric. And I'm going to turn on our guidelines first. Notice that I have a buttonhole guide and a color. So I can change that. And I think maybe we'll make it orange. I don't know what, we might change that again, depending on what shows up on camera. So close that, and then I'll go down here to the spacing. So the spacing on the buttonholes is measuring from the bottom of the slit of the top buttonhole down to the bottom of the slit of the second buttonhole. That's what the spacing is about and how it is measured. Here I have vertical and horizontal. So depending on what type of buttonholes that I'm going to sew. So if you're a garment sewer, you're probably going to sew a lot more of your vertical buttonholes than you will your horizontal. So this is where I can change the spacing. I can go smaller, I can go larger and change the spacing. If I get to a common imperial measurement, there's 1 7/8, then that's going to come up. Otherwise, it's just going to be in millimeters. And I don't really know where I was at before, but I think that's about where I was at. And then a cloth edge guide. So with the cloth edge guide, that's from the edge of your fabric to where your buttonhole will start. And buttonholes always stitch, I like to say, to the back. So they're going to start at the front and stitch to the back. Or start at the bottom and stitch to the top, however you want to look at it. When I was making a shirt for my grandson, I didn't know how far in from the edge buttonholes actually started. So I went to the department store and I was measuring children's button-up shirts, men's dress button-up shirts, women's button-up shirts. And most of them measured about a 1/2 inch in from the edge of the button placket. So I've got that set right here. Notice I also have memory slots, so I can save this to memory. All of my pockets are full, so I would have to go in and delete some, but you have 5 memory slots. So if I went into retrieve, you can see all the ones that I have saved. And if I wanted to save the one that I have on my machine now, I would just delete one of those. But I don't know which ones I'm going to be using, so I'm going to just leave those now. So I can close this. And now I'm going to turn on my projector. And then I'm going to change my camera over so you can see what is projected on the bed of your machine.
Wow, that looks amazing.
Doesn't it?
It sure does.
So let's start with my little tool pack that I have right here, this little square with all the different things in them. At the top, there is what looks like a little spool. So with the little spool, if I click on that, that changes the color of the projected buttonhole in the back. Can you see it changing colors? Maybe not.
Yep, it looks so good. It almost looks like a picture. So I'm so glad you're changing some things because it's so clear on that beautiful black fabric that it looks like a picture. But this is the placement.
It is. And you know, I've got the foot off the machine just for better visibility for right now. We can put it back on in just a second when we get ready to stitch a buttonhole. But I just think you can see so much better. So with that new 5x8 projection area, it even projects behind the foot, Angela. So I've got a guideline back here that I will, the first buttonhole that I sew, I'll line up the bottom of it with this first guideline. This next little area right here is showing me a preview out to the left of the foot of what my next buttonhole is going to stitch like, and also the size of it. Then I have another set of solid and dashed lines down below, and that's where my next buttonhole would stitch after I finish stitching this one. This orange line right here is the straight line that I'm trying to follow to stitch my buttonholes down the front of a shirt. This green line is the line that I line the edge of my cloth up with, or my shirt placket. So that's your cloth edge guide. But on this toolbox, after the spool, I have a square that when I select it, it brings up my 16 different colors that I can choose from. So I've got black selected as my background color, but let's see what happens if I switch to white. That shows up pretty good too. There's a sort of a peachy pinky. So depending on what makes it more visible for you, that's the one that you want to select. So we've got the black selected mainly because we're not getting that little rainbow effect with the black fabric and the black background selected. Then I just click on the check mark, it closes that, and I'm back to my toolbox. So the next icon over on that top row looks like 3 different types of stitches. So if I select that, then I get to preview the buttonhole before the one that is selected and the buttonhole after the one that is selected. So you can just use your little stylus and I like to call it the magic end. So the end that has the little light on it, you click the button and you can watch them move. So I'm at the very beginning. I want to go back to the one that I had been using. So I'll just select that. And the one in the center, oops, that's not the one I went one too far. So this one right here in the center is the one that I want to stitch. So when I find the one I want to stitch, I click on the little check mark and that buttonhole is selected. Now, this one right here is my stitch width. So think of the long sides of the buttonhole. I call them the legs of my buttonhole. That's changing the width of that stitch. And the next one down is the length of the stitch, or maybe you might refer to it more like it's denser or it's less dense. So I can have it either be more of a satin stitch or more of a zigzag stitch. And then this right here, if I want to refresh my buttonhole, and it's going to probably tell me I need to put the buttonhole foot back on.
Attach buttonhole foot A+. The
Did-
built-in camera detects buttonhole foot A+ by the mark A+ and the 3 dots.
I love the voice guidance. I'm watching that. I was trying to be quiet. Like, oh, I just love that.
Well, I started to speak, but then I thought, well, no, I'll just try not to speak and maybe you could hear it. So, so there's my buttonhole foot on. And now if I were to change the size and I could refresh that. So I have my little toolbox that's here on the fabric. I've got everything set up the way that I want it to be set up. So now I can just leave that there, or if I want to, I can just close it out by touching the little X. So we have the ability, like I said, to sew vertical buttonholes and horizontal buttonholes. So I'm going to take my fabric and just kind of fold the edge over. This was a last minute change of fabric color. So excuse me for not having it all set up. But I need to turn my guidelines back on and my projector back on so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to, like on most garments, you have a set amount, a distance that you go from your collar stand to your first buttonhole. So we're going to kind of pretend that that's what I'm doing. I personally like to sew buttonholes without my foot control because then I can just use my start stop button. So I've got the edge of my fabric lined up with this cloth edge guide. I can see that my buttonhole is going to stitch here. And another setting that I always like to turn on is an automatic thread cutter so that whenever it finishes the buttonhole, it cuts the thread and lifts the foot for me. But we're going to stitch a buttonhole. I might not have chosen a good color. I chose a dark color, mainly because I was going to try and use.
Because we were going to use. white fabric, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
That machine is so quiet.
Isn't it quiet?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't really see that buttonhole. So what I'm going to do quickly.
Yeah, we can see it once you have it underneath the light. Is it the blue one in the back there?
Yeah, it's the blue one in the back.
Yeah.
Can you
Yep,
see
we
it?
can see it now with the light on.
Okay. Well, I am going to quickly change to a white thread so you can see the next one as I get to sew it.
So again, we are live in the chat today. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them below and we'll try to answer those. So what she is showing today is the buttonhole feature on the Brother Aveneer.
So Angela, I am so spoiled with Brothers machines, especially the newer electronic machines, where when you quit sewing, the take-up lever comes up to the top so you can change your thread. You know?
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I have this buttonhole that I've already sewn. I'm going to align it with this first line back here, slide so that I get my distance, my fabric edge guide aligned properly. And I am sewing on an angle. So bear with me. They do come out nice and evenly spaced when you're sitting right in front of the machine, but maybe not so much whenever you're sitting off to the side and trying to reach around a camera.
So Kathy, I know somebody's going to ask because I'm looking at it myself. The bottom part of the buttonhole is not attached. So you can sew buttonholes with it or without it.
Oh, this fabric support plate. Yeah,
Yes.
you've got a fabric like a cotton fabric that feeds just fine. I don't need that.
Yeah, that's I'm so glad you showed that because I remember when this foot came out, I think with the Luminaire first or a while ago, and everyone said, well, what if I can't get my fabric under there correctly or it's in the way? Well, there you go. You don't need it.
Yep, you don't need it. So now if I were to align that white one up that I just sewed with my spacing line, and I can kind of see it behind the foot and then opening back there. And then I just want to align my cloth edge up and make sure everything is straight. And then
Hey, Kathy, before you hit sew on that, will you take the foot off so they can actually see what you're looking at?
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay,
there
so
you go.
This is the buttonhole I just sewed. This is the one that I had sewn before. And because I'm sewing at an angle, I did not get them aligned properly. That line should be right down this center line should be right down the center of the slit. This is where the next buttonhole is going to stitch. This next set of lines right here would be where the following buttonhole would stitch. So I don't know how easy that is to see. Let's see if we
a
can
little better.
maybe change the background color again.
Oh yes, that's even, you can see that great too.
Yeah, we got a little bit of those rainbow lines kind of running through, but this is where the previous one stitched. This is where the current one is going to stitch. And this is where the one following the one that I'm getting ready to stitch will do. So I'll close that. But I want to show you on my fabric as well how it works if we do horizontal buttonholes. So we've got a different set of lines, kind of, sort of. So let's change my background back again to the black and see if that shows up. Do you see my green line right here?
We sure can.
This is my cloth edge. And then I've got these guidelines for aligning for the spacing. And there's, there's different things that you can do with that. One of my favorite things to do is to make a buttoned pillow back. So I just overlap it and just put buttonholes in the back. And I'll show you the one that I made after I get finished with this. But here, I would just align my fabric differently if I'm going to stitch buttonholes horizontally. So I've got my cloth edge. I've got the previous one, the one I'm currently stitching, and then I've also got the one to the right that I would be stitching. So we can put the buttonhole foot back on. I can stitch one that direction, and then we can get back to something a little different. And I'll show you and tell you where I've used some of these. Angela, have you bought a new shower curtain lately?
Well, that's a good question. No, I have not, but I did make a duvet cover using this.
Did you? So
I
I bought a shower curtain, and when I was hanging it up with my, little decorative hooks, they're all buttonholes across the top.
Oh, yes, there are.
So if
are
you want
to
to
make your own now, Kathy?
Pardon me?
Are you going to make your own now?
No, I just bought a new one. So I'll save that for another time. We have one of those, like we did in January. We had that freaky snowstorm that went through the Panhandle, and we got ice over here on the East Coast. But yeah. So this is the horizontal buttonholes. So that's what I use for the pillow back closure, and I'll show you my pillow in just a little bit. But I want to show you how to line up the edge and align the buttonholes horizontally. All right, so there's my buttonhole that's stitched. So I'm going to go back to where my cloth edge guide is. My next buttonhole, my spacing between my buttonholes. So I'm going to line the one that I just stitched with this line that's here to the left. Let's see if we...
Can you slide your black fabric on there just so we can see that? There we go. Now we know what you're looking at. And I have to point out, you see where the buttonhole is there at the back, where it shows you what the buttonhole is going to look like. The first time I was playing on this, I kept moving my buttonholes there. And I was like, I could have sworn I had these a little further apart.
So what I'm doing, let me close this little screen out. What I'm doing is this line that's here to the left is where I'm lining the slit of this buttonhole up.
And we can see that it's a red line in case you guys can't see that. It's right where her buttonhole is if you look closely.
So then I've got the edge of my fabric right there at the cloth edge. We'll see how well I do going horizontally. versus vertically. That wasn't such a, it's always a challenge whenever you're not sitting directly in front of the machine to get things aligned right.
It's the beauty of the live shows. But this really shows how easy this is. You use your guidelines, you tell it how far apart you want it, how far apart you want the edge of the fabric, all of those things you have right there at your fingertips. I'm used to chalking up my fabric so much that I'm actually going to miss the chalk a little bit. But for this, I don't need the chalk.
Well, if my husband hadn't have emptied the garbage can today, I could have shown you an old pillow that I was kind of working on. So there's my buttonholes. Those two I got horizontal.
Wow. Simple and easy.
So I have a project. I'm always doing stuff for the school or for my daughter-in-law or for my grandchildren. But that's the beauty of being able to sew and to make. So they have coming up I think it's called Walking History, where they pick a book from a period of time, you know, back in history, and they wear a costume that's relevant to that. So she's going back into the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so making her a long flowy skirt, that's no big deal. But what kind of top can she wear?
Oh.
So I was thinking, because my husband and I used to do pre-Civil War reenactment. And in the summertime, when it was hot and you were outside camping and there were no showers around, you wore as little bit of clothing as you could. So a chemise or a corset cover, they sometimes call them, but they are gathered around the neck, a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what I would normally use is something called beading. It's a beading trim. It has buttonholes and usually a decorative edge. And I thought, well, I could do that. I looked, I didn't have any, and I thought, well, maybe I can make some. Well, that didn't.
Oh, look at that.
So I stitched the buttonholes evenly spaced, and then using the projector, I was trying to put a decorative scallop evenly spaced between them. So I don't know if I need to go back and stitch the scallops first and then try and space the buttonholes evenly between the scallops or what. But I decided this is a one-time use costume. We're not going to put that much time into it. So this is what she's going to try on. And if it fits, then I'll finish the sleeve edges.
Oh, look at that.
So I've got buttonholes going all the way around so she can gather.
Oh, I love that.
But I mean, I would even still wear something like this now, you know, just a cute little summer top made out of a nice handkerchief weight linen, just a little sleeveless. So
Absolutely gorgeous. Hey, I was just thinking, for somebody who has a fashion moment where they cut out a top and the neckline's too big, and you're like, what do I do? This is perfect. Put buttonholes around it and just gather it together. Perfect fix.
Perfect fix.
Perfect fix. Oh, that's really a cute top. She's going to love that.
I'm going to change my camera and go back so I can see you.
So we can see you. That's really a cute top, Kathy. I would wear that.
So the other thing that I've done with buttonholes is my baby grandson needed a shirt for school because he started school this year. Well, preschool.
Oh, so
So the little buttons, see if I can get them.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
And do you notice he's got a monogram on his pocket? His dad
Oh my
was
God.
impressed. So that's his number shirt for starting school. But I
So
was talking
cute.
about my pillow. So this is how I like to do the closure. Just with buttons and buttonholes on the back. It's just a lapped back. Just makes it really easy. So this is for a friend who is her new house should be built or be ready to be moved in sometime the month of April. So we're right there.
You're ahead of
So
the game. This is perfect.
I needed a housewarming gift. She's into bling, so we've got a little rhinestone like slidey belt buckle. We've got a wide ribbon. I've got buttonholes that I wove the ribbon through. But these buttonholes, Angela, my buttonhole foot will not make this big of a buttonhole for I think it's a 2-inch ribbon. So I want to show you that there are other options if you need to make a wide buttonhole.
Oh, I love this.
So again, let me get back to my machine. And we're going to change it over to embroidery this time.
I love the embroidered buttonholes. Absolutely love it.
So I just need to change the foot out, put my embroidery foot on. Sometimes I wonder why I tighten this so tight. And sometimes I struggle getting it loose, especially from an angle. And I will probably change my thread because I've got a light fabric cooped up. So I'll put black thread on my machine. I have to tell you, I love my needle threader. Oops, let me get this in the right slot. Reach behind, pull it forward. Where's my needle?
All that quickly. So the needle threader is a little further back. It took me just a little bit to get used to it, but once I got the hang of it, I just reach a little further back and we're good to go.
Yeah, I've kind of found that if I go to the left and then just pull my thread all the way to the back and then kind of come sweep back around to the front, it catches it 99% of the time.
That's a good idea.
That little trick was taught to me by none other than Cheryl Hoffman.
Good trick.
Good trick. So I will go to my machine screen. And we have in this category 5 right here where it looks like some decorative stitches. If you select that, the first thing that comes up is buttonholes. Then you have some buttonhole decorations, and then you have your decorative stitches in the embroidery side. But I went to just the buttonhole part. I chose the type of buttonhole I wanted, and you have 5 different sizes. So I think I used size number, I don't know, 4. What is 5? 5 is about 4 inches. 4 is a little over 2 inches. we can blow that up so we can see it better on our screen. I've got my 1-inch grid on here, so I'm pretty sure that's the one that I used. But you can also size these. So I needed it to fit about a 2-inch ribbon, so I just sized it down and said, okay. So in order to get this where I wanted it to be, I turned on my projector, and I will go back and put my hoop on my machine. And so you can see where it's projected. It's not doing it right this moment because it's telling me I don't have a hoop on there. So when I get the hoop on there, then it should go. So when I go to embroidery, turn on the projector, you can see my grid. Let me turn the grid off so maybe you can see that a little bit better. I'll turn my grid off, and then we'll project it. So do you see my buttonhole projected here?
Wow, we sure can.
And then I have more tools. So this little square that's projected right down here in the bottom left-hand corner, if I click on that, then I've got tools now. The same tools that I would have with any embroidery design. I can move it. I can rotate. I can move my projector out of the way. Let's move it back down to the bottom. There's where I could rotate it. There's where I could move it. So then I could use these
I
little
wonder if
arrows.
you could throw that. Do you still have that black fabric by you by any chance?
Yeah. Let's throw
Can
that
you
on
just-
top.
Yeah, because we really can't see. We just see a little glare. Oh, yes, much better. Everyone's like, I can see now.
There you go. So if I needed to move, since I'm in move, my buttonhole is moving to the right. So not only do I have projection for sewing, the sewing side and the use of buttonholes, but the fabulous projector that I have on the embroidery side that I use for my alignment a lot of times, I can use that for larger buttonholes as well. So that's how I got the buttonholes on the back of my pillow. I mean, the decorative ribbon on the back of my pillow was from that one buttonhole from the embroidery side. But I just wanted you to see real quickly that, you know, you've got 2 different ways to make buttonholes on your Aveneer. You can either embroider them or you can sew them.
So I think the newest thing then, because a lot of people here I know have the Luminaire, a lot have the Stellaire, that both have that great buttonhole foot, if I'm correct. And you can embroider buttonholes on those as well. You know what I have found with when I'm sewing jeans, that's a real thick fabric. And I end up getting on a 4x4 hoop, sticky back stabilizer, throw my jeans on there. Using that projector right there, I know exactly what it's going to look like, and you're good to go. The nice part of the Aveneer, the projector is larger now. And even for the embroidery side, you can now edit right there, as you showed, using your stylus right there on your hoop.
Yeah, you can move it, you can rotate it, you can, I think, size it. If
All
I'm
those
not
different things.
all the different things, then you can close out that little tool pack, I call it, if it's in your way. But that's how I did the buttonholes right here that I wove the ribbon through.
That's such a cute project. What a great gift.
So I don't know if you can tell, this is a bright, dark purple. She's a purple gal. She even has a purple stripe in her hair. But
she's going to love that.
I hope. So
I would love to know from everybody on here, have you tried the embroidered buttonholes? And now after seeing this, are you going to try the sewing buttonholes? In fact, they're just so much easier. I think just the quality of the foot now, and all the different tools we have, buttonholes are going to be a thing to do. And I think the fashion fix of the day, if you have a top that's too big, do what she did on that top and make buttonholes all the way around and tie it. I love that.
That, or I've seen, where you've got a neckline that's a little low. You can always put a couple of buttonholes in there. What about as far as garment sewing? Any seamstress or, some person that tailors clothes will tell you that if somebody brings in a dress, say a wedding dress, that I want to wear grandma's wedding dress and it's too small for me. Mm-hmm. So take out the zipper or whatever in the back and corset the back.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to worry about turning those little tiny bias tubes that you would loop a button around or string a ribbon through or whatever. I would just sew buttonholes on it.
That's a great idea. I did that for someone once. Yeah. And it worked out great, except the buttonholes were not as nice as they are now.
So you've got home deck, you've got garment sewing, there's all kinds of things that you can do with buttonholes. It's just your imagination is just where it ends.
Wherever you want it to go. Kathy, this has been a super fun tutorial. I love the projects. I think that shirt is a game changer. That's so cute. And those kids are so lucky to have you teaching them.
So, remember the last time I was on, I made the little banner.
Yeah.
That's how I got my buttonholes at the top. I used the cloth edge guide from this finished edge, and so that they were even. I mean, they're a little bit too far apart to be able to use the spacing, but I was able to use the cloth edge guide, and I did go back and sew buttons on a ribbon.
Oh, look at that.
And I like this so much better. So
I like that too.
So 1st of April, now we've gone from St. Patrick's Day, now we're into Easter. So Easter will be all of April.
Changing up the banner.
Well, I just have to change that one little thing on the letter past on what would be the O.
That's so easy. So in case you all missed that episode, that was about maybe 3 weeks ago. Just go back on the YouTube channel for Brother and go under the live heading and just back it up until, and if you hold your mouse over the videos, you can kind of see who's on there. So if you see Kathy, that was the banner.
Yeah. I think it was in February, like towards the latter half of February, maybe.
Yeah, I can't quite remember.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. But this has been a great tutorial. Leave your questions and comments. We're live in the chat today. Very exciting. And I would love to know, are you a new Aveneer owner? Because there's so many great tutorials for you. Also, if you register your machine on Brother's site and you're in the USA, you will have access to the masterclass. And I believe now you can actually get the masterclass in the EU. So stay tuned for more. Kathy, this is so exciting. And I'm kind of inspired to go sew some buttonholes.
It's not hard anymore.
It's not hard. So we're going to end this with showing you the font preview on the Aveneer. Kathy, until next time, happy sewing.
Thanks, you as well.
Bye.
Bye.